Nesterenko from written.com, and I'm joined today by Amy Vernon, a journalist with over 20 years of experience, social media marketer, speaker and consultant. Amy, how are you doing today?
It's going great, thank you.
Glad to hear that. So we're going to be talking today about creating content for the international audience. Amy, how is content creation different for the international audience as compared to creating content just for people who live in the United States?
Well, one of the things we talked about in our panel on this yesterday is that you need to be very careful in terms of how you write and your phrasing, because you have to be aware that there are a lot of turns of phrase, a lot of idiomatic expressions that mean something in English, and you can translate them into another language, and if you don't translate them with the intent behind it, you're just translating words and they don't mean anything. And even if you translate it with the intent, it may be an expression that means something in English, but it doesn't, it's not a phrase that's used in another language. So it really, a very important thing is to be cognizant of how you're phrasing things and not to be too conversational or idiomatic. And in addition, you really, there has to be a certain universality. Obviously, you don't want to just write about things that are happening in your town, for example, because why would someone on the other side of the world care unless they were visiting? You know, I mean, maybe if you're from New York, it's a little different because a lot of people come to New York, but you want to have a certain universality in what you're writing about, things that are of interest to people in other places in the world.
Are there certain topics to write about when creating content for the international audience?
Yes, and a lot of that also comes back to language. Chris Hure, who founded the Social Media Club, he was talking about how just knowing a little bit of the language in the various countries that he traveled to when he was first starting the club really helped a lot, because even though he couldn't speak the language fluently, he was able to show that he was trying. And you know, that's like when anybody comes to America, if they try to speak English, there's a much more of an open feeling to them. And I've found when I've traveled to Italy or other countries, if I at least try to communicate in their language, the openness is much greater because it shows that you're making an effort. We joke that one of the keys is really to not be so American, which is, I guess, you know, sort of the stereotype of the American who just goes and is all loud and just wonders why everybody doesn't speak English. And it's really to show an appreciation and to try to communicate with people in their own language and on their own terms, because it shows a respect for them, because you're asking them to be part of your community. And if you're not giving them something back, at the very least just a respect, then why are they going to want to be a part of your community?
What things are critical when building international community?
Well, there are several things. One is also being aware of all the different time zones and where your audience is, and being available at those times as well. I mean, if you want to build an international audience, but you're only online during, 9 to 5 Eastern Standard Time in the U.S., there's that leaves out a lot of people in a lot of the world. It depends on, of course, where internationally you're looking to build your community. But it's sort of to recognize that there's a 24-hour clock, and to, even if you're not physically, you can't be up 24 hours a day, but to have some sort of interactions there and some sort of availability around the clock, and awareness that your audience is not necessarily always online when you're online, and trying to bridge that gap. And again, like we were talking about, really, really critical is just communication and being aware of what they're interested in. Mm-hmm. and making sure that you're giving them some of that.
Amy, you work with the company Internet Media Labs. Can you tell us more about it?
Sure. Internet Media Labs is a startup in New York, and we're building platforms to help people find relevant people and conversations from their social streams. So basically, finding the people who are actually interested in the things that you're talking about, who are among your followers or among the friends of your followers, and in conversations, whether hashtag conversations or other conversations about the topics that you're interested in, finding those conversations so that you can participate in them. Because if they're conversations about your area of interest or your business, like, you want to be involved and participate in those conversations. We also are building platforms to help visualize your social stream. One of our products, which is in open beta, is called Seesaw, and it visualizes a hashtag stream or any tweets that are from a URL, and we're going to be adding other platforms into there, like Google Plus and LinkedIn eventually. And we just went into private beta on OneCube, which is the primary platform, which is what I initially explained. We're also a co-working space, in a sense, where we have 2 floors in our office in Chelsea, and there are a lot of other companies, startups in that space. VentureBeat has their New York office in our on our floor. Sightlighter, Spreecast, Maker Studios, though with their $40 million round that they just had, they're going to be moving out to a larger space soon. But that's very exciting for them, because I mean they've been in our space for months now, and it's very exciting to see them just explode and move out. So we have some other companies that are going to be moving in there. So it's a very dynamic work environment as well, and we've kind of surrounded ourselves with really cool companies doing really cool things.
Amy, I know you're passionate about bacon. What is it in bacon that drives you?
Well, it's kind of funny. I became known as the Bacon Queen because I used to be very involved in the website dig.com, sort of in its heyday, and I one day submitted a photo of bacon to Dig, and it hit the front page, and the comments just had me laughing for days. Like, people both exclaiming the wonderment of bacon and also wondering why there was a photo of bacon on the front page of Dig, and so it just sort of took on a life of its own, and so I just, for me, it's a fun thing. I mean, I do love bacon. It tastes really good. I'm not quite as obsessed with it as a lot of people think that I, just sort of assume that I am. It's sort of one of those fun things that took on a life of its own, and it's, if you can't beat them, join them. So I just sort of embraced it, and I have a website that basically aggregates news about bacon. It more or less is like the Drudge Report, but only for bacon and pork news. So that's the bacon.
Thank you, Amy, for sharing your thoughts with us today, and thank you for watching us at written.com.